Hi,
We're live
we're
now.
here live with Matteo and Wave of Action, and we're going to be having our weekly chat. We're going to start with the UN David Cameron discussion. Kick it off from the beginning. Well, not the beginning, but yeah, kick it off. Yeah. So,
Yeah, so I mean, with the UN, I thought that was incredibly rich of David Cameron. I mean, the fact that he stood in front of the world, well, the Western world, and talked about human rights and how the and talked about domestic extremists, domestic terrorists, and it just seems like a massive setup for the destruction of anybody that's against any sort of conservative or Western mentality. Western, well, what's it called? Liberal, no, what's it called? Liberal capitalism.
mm,
Yeah.
Just stand up to anybody that disagrees.
But when I listen to it and I see like the non-violent extremists, and he actually mentioned 9/11 and 7/11 and having alternative views, my thought straight away was like, this is 1984 with the Fort Police. You know that you can't question the official line. It's got to be what they say it is, and if you put online that you've got a different view or you've got evidence against it, then you're a terrorist. And with the closed courts, that's frightening.
well,
Yeah.
the European closed courts, you've got the fact that with people like ourselves, especially with kids or families, they'd instantly use the Cinderella law to remove the children first from a household they deem as, unfit to care for kids and that are teaching kids their kind of that you're a dangerous parent, obviously. So we'd lose the kids and then not have any trial and lose our lives. And that'll be what will happen if the Tories come into us in
Yeah.
2015.
I mean, the fact that our government, supposedly one of the most democratic in the world, somehow has managed to accumulate so much power over one's kids is ridiculous to say the least. I mean, yes, the government should step in if, for example, the child's in physical danger or there is clear issues of abuse. But I mean, that is just that is taking that whole situation way
It's
out of context.
frighten. It's to frighten us, especially like parents who are on their own with children are going to be frightened by that and are going to probably skulk off the internet and think, I've got to look after my family. That's another person that bites the dust, another little agenda for them. But I don't doubt for a second that they will be scrapping human rights if they get in. I don't
Oh
doubt
God,
that.
yeah. Oh, of
That
course they
first
will.
thing they'll do is round up the first few people, because what was it that the camps that they're talking about? The word camp itself is horrifying. It's just horrifying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Hitler wasn't too long ago, and he used camps for the very same reason.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, this whole idea. I mean, this idea of what the UN speech and the Conservative Conference was about, in my opinion, is a warning to us, the people, saying that right. I mean, we're now going to be controlling you and weeding out any of the troublemakers, the guys that don't believe in the general gist of history, that don't believe that every single Muslim in the Middle East is a terrible person, that don't believe that rich should not be taxed, and that don't believe that they will be rich one day by working their ass off on a minimum wage job. It's a way of telling people that this is well, we're now going to be
But that,
tackling you because you've been speaking freely too long.
but
Mm.
that was something that David Cameron said in his speech, like 100% employment. Now, to me, you cannot have 100% employment unless you've got a slave workforce, a free labour workforce. So everybody who is on benefits will be forced to work for their benefits. And I read an article today about Ian Duncan Smith. He wants, if you've got longer than 6 months to live, you've got to take work experience or you'll lose your benefits, terminally ill.
That is madness.
He's a
How
Absolutely.
guy, isn't
did these people? I mean, I wonder if at some point somewhere did they just think and say, did I really just say that? I was
he?
asking a
Do you think
dying man
they
or
sleep at
woman to go and work.
night? I can't see how they sleep at night. I really
I,
can't.
I
I think
used
they
to
live off
think,
drugs, to be honest. That's the only explanation.
Mm.
I used to think when you used to get things like two serial killers together, or two, serial rapists or something like that together, how the conversation comes about and they find out that they've found somebody else that likes the same thing as them. At what point is it okay to share these psychotic ideas? And then you look at your government and think they must sit around doing it all the time. They must just sit there thinking, not afraid to say nothing.
You know, is it just me, or have they become braver and braver?
I think that we, as the British public, have actually done sod all. Over 10,000 disabled people in 2010, was it, that died, and we have done nothing. That figure rose when it went up to 72 people a week at one point. We are probably talking over 100,000 sick and disabled and poor people in this country that have died, yet we have done nothing. Each and every one of us have done very little. We might have signed petitions, we might have gone to the Atos demos or something like that, but actually we should have been outside Parliament for these people. For each one of those people, they're our most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you know what I just discovered recently about that as well, in regards to that, is that, we're always told that the reason why British people don't do that is because British people are very proper, they're very sort of, finicky, or we shouldn't make a fuss. But Britain, it's part of our culture to riot and protest. We're one of the countries that have done that the most out of all European countries in the past. I don't know where this idea that we are prim and proper started. I can't remember when.
It's a fabrication.
It is a
because
fabrication.
When we have the crowd together and things like that, the hardest, the crowd mentality, it's very easy to get out of control and to become boisterous and to one thing to lead to another. We consciously protest now, and we want a good opinion of us. We want other people to join us, but there is plenty that is itching on the sideline to actually get this started, to say, look at Hong Kong, these people have no rights, they're all standing up. We're losing our rights. We'll end up worse than Hong Kong at this rate. It's time to stand up, because you've got the NHS. You were saying earlier about the next election. If the Conservatives get in, we won't have an NHS. We won't have any freedom and rights. We could fight parents and people that are just sticking up because they want a better world, could find their kids gone. We could find ourselves in secret courts where we can't defend ourselves. Or even if just the bare minimum, all our Facebook comments being censored before we can post them.
Yeah.
Banned from speaking in public. Banned from going on TV, giving an alternative view to a news. You could be walking down the street, that something's happened, and the BBC or someone come up to you and ask you your opinion. You wouldn't be able to answer without pre-approval.
That is ridiculous. That is nuts. The fact that you can try and stop somebody from speaking.
That's a guarantee that in 2015 that we are pretty much going to be taken off the internet. That is, they've done the net neutrality, they've done all that. Taking the human rights away will take our free speech, and they will take us off the internet. And I do think that parents like me and P do need to be wary that, this is a time now where all these years we've been talking and saying, people have been saying, and then one day there'll be a knock at my door. I think people will find that 2015 Tory election will be that knock at the door.
Yeah. The worst thing would be a UKIP Tory coalition, which would
that might actually not be the worst thing on the human rights side, because the UKIP think that this is to silence them and their extremist views. So UKIP are going to fight against the human rights thing. They're not happy with it at all. But I think statistically we could end up with Boris and fucking Farage as our deputy and Boris as our PM, and you just look at that. That is the time when you know that politics is screwed. If that man leads this country, it's a mockery.
He is a perfect political dictator. Everybody loves him. They all think he's this cute, fluffy little mayor.
Floppy hair.
All floppy hair. He is the perfect political dictator, and
he's a genius.
It worries me the day he comes in.
He's an absolute genius. He is a genius manipulator. He is an incredible politician. Terrible person, a great politician.
But then you have like the Green Party with this freedom thing. I have to think about Caroline Lucas and things like that, where she went to Balcom, and she will be classed as an extremist now because of some of her views. And I think she was put on an extremist list. I know some of the Green Party have been.
Yeah.
Now, how much is that going to gag the Green Party from actually talking about the issues that they want to talk about? If there is a
well, eventually they'll want to bring it down to the three main parties anyway, aren't they? They're going to turn around at some point and go, oh, well, no other party has got in for so many years, so let's just cut this other party bullshit and save cuts for taxes. Do you know what I mean? They'll fucking love that one. They'll sell that one to the public straight off.
Yeah. I mean, what you're seeing here is a blatant... I mean, you can see Britain moving away from a two-party system. Let's be honest, the Lib Dems are pretty much... They're not really here or there. They're just irrelevant. So you got a two-party system, but now you've got the Greens coming in, you got UKIP that scared the living crap out of the Conservatives. And what you're seeing here is a reaction of saying, right, we have given the people way too much leeway. You know, there are new parties coming in, there is freedom of speech being exercised, there are marches going on every day. What is going on here? This is not what we wanted to envisage.
And it is every day. If there is a march, sometimes you can find one. If you've got a day off, it's like,
this is an act
where
of
I'll
desperation.
go.
I think it's probably about 10 a day in London.
Yeah.
I think it's an act of desperation. I think we may be actually looking at this in a slightly more concerned way than we actually should. Because if, for example, I mean, often what happens is you get an extreme reaction when people are desperate. And let's be honest, Theresa May talking about removing democracy to protect democracy just doesn't even make sense in any people's ideas or mind. You know, to protect democracy, we must remove democracy from this country. That just doesn't even.
It is all fear, because the internet has such a wealth of information, and we are questioning everything now. Everybody is questioning everything.
We are winning the cyber. We are winning the cyber war. We're losing the reality.
We're winning the mind. We're winning the mind war, the war of the mind. People are starting to question, because, you know, it starts off with you can't pay your bills, you're working really hard, you're desperate, you feel alone. You start looking for answers. You find other people on the internet, then you start delving a bit deeper. You know, before long they're sending you Freeman stuff, or you're seeing Occupy stuff or stuff like that, and you suddenly realise you're not alone. There's lots of people who are as frustrated as you and see that there's something wrong in the system, because at the end of the day that's all it is. We all see that there is something fundamentally flawed with the current system, and we want to change it, and they are struggling to keep hold of that system. They are fighting tooth and nail for it, and they are trying to repress us so that we cannot keep fighting them. But knowledge is knowledge. The information is out there, and people will start rising up.
Yeah, I mean, the truest thing someone's ever said is that once you have knowledge, that's the only thing that nobody can take away from you. Once you have that understanding, once you've learned something, people can't just rip that away from you. You can't take that away. So it's like you said, if you're winning the war on people's minds, and the fact that they're now viewing things differently, they're not listening to the BBC, they're not listening to Rupert Murdoch's empire of newspapers, etc. That is, I think, more important than winning a war in laws and because laws can be changed. Because if the parliament is removed and re-elected tomorrow, those laws can be changed like that. You know, it doesn't take long to change an act of parliament in this country.
No.
But winning a people's mentality and the way they see and perceive things is a lot longer. And once you change that, it's very, very hard to get it back to the way it is, which is why it's so hard to do what activists are doing now. But it is happening. And I mean, personally, I think the Conservative conference was actually a breath of fresh air for a lot of people, simply because you can see how scared they are.
They're definitely panicking. But it's, you know, things always get worse before they get better. Yeah. And the more that they take away from us, the more that we'll stand up against it. It's just that who's sacrificed on the way.
They start taking activist children, that will be when you'll see people, that's when activists will stop. Yeah, I'm telling you, they start taking activist children, you'll see a rise. You'll see a rise, because we're protecting people who are having their children stolen every day. And then if they're going to come along and take ours as well, that's a hell of a lot of people's children you're taking. And people who, once you've took them, you've got nothing left to live for.
And did you know, Matteo, that there's a quota? They have quotas for the number of children that they have to take off people in a month.
Really?
Yeah.
So how many they have to take?
Yeah.
Have to. Yeah.
Sorry, you have to explain this one slightly more.
Social services have quotas of how many children they're expected to save in a month.
Say, okay, we have to kidnap 30 children this month.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, some of them are put up for forced adoption. Some of them will go into privately run children's homes, or some will be fostered. You know, it's a big business. The government used to run children's homes. It used to be run by the government, but now it's like all private sector. It is a profit for a business.
Well, it used to be
you can't turn anything into a business. That's what liberal democracy. That's what liberal capitalism keeps forgetting. You can't turn everything into a business. Otherwise, it just gets ugly. Things get really ugly.
Well, no, especially not like when you look at children in care, they are the most vulnerable people. You know, and elderly probably that. But the children in care, they're still young minds, and you know, you're going to shape what person they turn into as an adult. You know, so they are our most vulnerable. And we are putting them in the likes of P4S and other businesses, and we're allowing them to say that this many children must be going into care. Now, obviously, if a child's been abused, we've got to do something to help that child being abused. But you don't have quotas. You don't have quotas.
No, I mean, you presume
quotas just something
as
else.
low as possible. You know, you want to keep the number of how many kids you have to take as low as possible, because that should be your last resort.
That's the chitty chitty bang bang child snatcher, the catcher. You know, it's literally that's what it is. Like chucking kids into the back of a van and saying, right, that's it. Taxes are down this month a little bit. Let's fucking nick a few kids to pay for the rest of the, you know, big bonuses. Because that's what it is. Kids are the commodity. And the thing is, we stand back, and the only thing that stops us joining these people in the fight and literally standing there and taking these children back is our own children at home. Because every mother and father knows that they don't want to see any child going through that, whether it's your own or anybody else's. But you have to protect your own as well in this day and age. Once that's gone,
and they don't look out for the children, because I would foster, but I haven't got an extra spare room, and they say that a child has to have an extra spare room. Now, I was fostered, and I shared with my foster sister, and that never bothered me. And part of being fostered is that you are part of that family. Now, if I have another child, as a sibling, you share rooms with other siblings.
I'd have been grateful for that company.
Sisters and brothers, that's standard when you're younger.
Yeah, so when it comes to fostering, it should be down to the standard of home you can have. And then with my neighbour, my neighbour, she wanted to do fostering, but she was told that her husband couldn't hug the kids. And he said that if the child falls down and he couldn't pick them up and hug them, then he wouldn't do it. Now, I worked in children's homes as well, and that was one of the things that I said at the initial interview. You know, if I cannot hug a child that's crying, I don't want the job. Do you know what I mean? If I can, because these are
they're vulnerable. They need love.
These are the most, you know, they need love. They feel, because you've taken their parents away, they feel like they are unlovable because they haven't got their mum. So it's very important that, not that you replace the role of the mother, because really, where possible, you should maintain a healthy relationship. A lot of foster parents are quite hostile towards the natural mothers and tittle-tattle everything to the social services. Oh, her skirt was a bit short this week, she come to pick them up. You know, and stuff like that. Instead of working together, you know, when a family splits up like a relationship, you hope that the mother and father work together and do what's best in the interest of the children.
Yeah, you all know social services sell the parents out as quick as they can. When social services, I've heard of so many cases where social services have been involved and they've literally noted anything and everything, food in cupboards and stuff. If you're someone like me, I have no food in my fridge and no food in my cupboard because I buy it all that day because I don't like wasting food. And that way I eat what I buy.
See,
they come to my house and tell me I've got no food in the cupboard, so I'm not adequately feeding my children. It's like, well, I haven't bought dinner yet, if I could. Do you know what I mean? But you've not got that voice to say that. That'll just be noted down as a fact because that person came to your house.
I don't stock my cupboards because I found that If I go to and get what I want, I throw away less, and actually I spend a lot less, because when I used to do a weekly shop, I'd probably spend 60 quid in the weekly shop, and then nip into the shop every day, getting your little odds and sods. That was ending up being £10, £20. So I just find it better, more economical, to just go out and buy what I need for the day. Save a fortune.
And they judge you on that.
That's
You haven't got fully. And they have, when they are not there for the parents or the families. They are there for a simple. They probably think they're there. Some of them probably think they're there for the families. And take these notes, take this notes, if that. They're all just indoctrinated, no different from schools. You know, this is a bad thing, that's a bad thing, this is a bad thing, this is a bad thing. Keep note of this, but they're still there for one purpose, and that's to fill their quota.
Yeah, I mean that's the major problem, though, isn't it? And I mean it's what, and I think this is what we're talking about, is what's scaring a lot of the government, the Conservatives, and so forth. Is because before, the problems that you described, me as a student, I wouldn't have any idea. I would know the fact that I can't survive while studying and working a minimum wage job and doing something else. Rents are through the roof. You know, most of my friends are living in libraries, etc. Those would be the problems that students would be facing. Then there will be small and medium business owners who are getting taxed their hell and back because they can't afford to pay the tax because they're not making as much money as they were before. That's their problem. Then you got foster kids having other issues. You got elderly people that can't afford to pay gas, so they're freezing in winter. So you got all these different groupings in society that were originally isolated from each other, and they all had their own small problems which they thought were just specific for themselves. Instead, now I think what you're getting, especially with all these cross, gender, cross age group, cross whatever organizations, activist organizations. People actually getting together and talking about it, so you're telling me problems that you have, I'm telling you the problems I have, etc., etc. So, it's that communication aspect that I think worries
And
me.
then we're also doing
when everybody else just had their own problems, they just thought it was their own little group that had that issue. Everyone else in society was fine, it's just them.
Yeah, and now it's being done globally. We know it's as a whole.
Yeah. The system just doesn't work unless you've got about $1 million in the bank. Or probably
Did you hear David Cameron's little speech? Because I thought that hit the young people quite hard. That where they would be likely to do, workfare sort of things, or get student debts. So either you are going to be a debt slave or you are going to be a wage slave. When you leave school, that's the choice that the Conservative is going to give you. You either agree to go on a low-paid work placement job, or you agree to sign yourself up to thousands of pounds worth of debt. You ain't getting no other help. There'd be no better. And when you take that to kids leaving care, because when I left care and I got a one-bedroom, crummy little shitty bedsit, and I worked for £35 a week on a YTS, and I was expected to live off the rest of that. I couldn't go to college because no one was going to give me any money. If I was at college, the job centre would turn around and say, you're not available to work. You've got to be available to work 24/7 to get job seekers allowance. So when you're saying about that, you're basically saying that kids coming out of care, they have to go and work a crappy job for basic benefit money. That's not right.
I mean, the young people that are being attacked from across the board, if I was going to vote from a youth perspective, for myself, I wouldn't have much of a choice, because the Labour Party, for example, have said that if they get into power, everybody that's under the age of 25 is not going to have a safety net. You will not be able to apply for any sort of funding whatsoever.
There's going to be a lot.
And you can say it's all right for Ed Miliband and his family wealth, who can see that their kids go to university and they have a nice little lump sum, or they can help their kids out. What about those kids that are growing up in poverty or do not have a family that can assist them till they're 25 years of age? Because they're the ones that are going to be left screwed for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
because they're the most informative years.
I mean, even if you do have a family, the amount of taxation or the little amount of money that parents are getting nowadays, they've got to worry about themselves surviving, let alone having to then deal with the fact that their son or whatever has come out of university with a huge debt. And now they come back home because rents are astronomical, and on top of that, they can't get any help from the state, and on top of that, they can't get any job.
And then you look at, like, that's the whole problem, because the people running this country are all millionaires, and they do not have any concept of everyday life, any concept of what it's like to meet a bill. Now, I'm looking, my daughter, she get grant and everything like that, you know, that was fine. But my friend, they own their own house. She works bloody hard, and she doesn't have a lot of money spare at the end of the week. But her daughter's gone to college or university, I can't remember which one, and she's had to move away for the course. Now, her mum's had to find £10,000 for a board and keep for the next year, which she's had to, like, remortgage her house. You know, and she's already struggling.
I think that's what they want you to do. I think that is what corner I don't like saying this, middle class working families are being pushed to do, because they can't afford it. They're not like the, you know, toffs who can just go, oh yes, I'll just draw it out the bank, love. You know, we know we're not like that. I don't see my daughter anymore. The minute she left school, I don't see her no more. She had to go get a job to pay for her transport to college, and obviously start saving for uni in 2 years' time. And she works straight after school in New Look, you know, bam, barely any wage. I'm telling you, she is on the minimum wage, and they don't pay well. They don't give them time off at the weekend.
Kids' minimum wage is a joke.
Saturday and Sunday.
That's £4, isn't it? Or £4 or £5 something?
They have to work Saturday and Sunday. So that is their life, everything, work. I do not see her. They have stolen her from me, basically, so she can get an education to work in this system, which, as we all know, if you don't go Eton, you don't get anywhere.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, for young people, I mean, this pisses me off massively to no end, is the fact that you're pushing young people into doing so much to the point where they can't even stop to think.
Yeah.
Like
once you leave school, you don't get a chance to think till the day you die. They don't want you to think. Bad slaves think.
Yeah.
I mean, it does cost to think nowadays. It actually genuinely costs to think. You have to have money to be able to think freely, to be able to have time to sit down and actually have a thought about society.
What we need to do is stop calling money and start calling it time, because that's what the value is, time. Each hour that you're paid £7 for is time. Is that hour worth £7?
There was
and I think once you've hit the point where you've decided that the only way your family can be happy is if you earn more money and get better things for them. Once you've hit that stage, I think that's when you're suckered in. Once you realise that it's not about, right, fine, we've got no money, okay, we are going to the woods and we're going to make stick people. What happened to that shit? Because my kids still like stick people. You know, and it's about, nobody thinks you can do any. They've took spaces now where you can't do anything for free. You can't go to a public place anymore without paying for the park in there. You can't go without there's quotas getting into swimming pools. You know, the prices have been eked up. Everything is so expensive that they've hiked it up, but there's still things you can do for free. Yeah. And you don't need these 3-4 grand holidays a year to make you happy and my children deserve a holiday. Yeah, they do. And I'm going to go and put that tent right in the middle of the woods, and no one's going to charge me for it. And
what we're going to do next year, we're in the summer holidays. We're reclaiming the school summer holidays, because there is so many people we know that cannot afford to take their kids on holidays. So next year, we are getting a crowd of us together. We are going to Cornwall, and we are occupying somewhere for the whole 6 weeks holiday, and any poor person who wants a free holiday in Cornwall is welcome to come and stay in the field that we're occupying.
Yeah,
because it's a grand for a week's holiday. A grand for a week's holiday in England. You know, not many people have that. They say that having a holiday is not important. Going to the beach and building sandcastles, playing in rock pools is a fundamentally teaching you about the environment. It's teaching you about the ecosystem, how life works. It's refreshing to get away from all the sounds and noise of big cities and to spend quality
Healthy
family
food.
time. Yeah, it is. You can't say it's a luxury. It's bloody right.
But the point is also that I think we're forgetting that they don't want you to learn about the ecosystem. They don't want you to be healthy, because if you have time off work, if you go on holiday, that gives you time to think. Gives you time to thinking.
You might discuss something with one of these bad extremist activists.
Yeah, exactly. You might end up mixing with one of them.
Lurking around.
And then you
in
start
the
to have ideas, and that's when it gets dangerous. You know, thinking's a bad thing. They don't want people to think.
See, when you're like leaving school and things, you get your house and you start buying stuff, and you move in and you brought
get your house.
Right, say like maybe it's just one room. I start in one room, but you start off wherever you leave home if you can. You know, my in-laws still all live at home because they can't afford to live on their own. Now, I've got kids. I didn't sign up till I'm 80. Let me say this now. I intend to have my life back at some point. You know, and nowadays you're finding that people can't afford to leave home. You know, they the only way they can have any kind of quality of life and work is to stay at home with their parents. So I'm talking about people in their 30s that are still living at home. You know, and
I'll have to admit, right, I'm not happy about the way they go about that, but I am quite happy about the thought of my kids being there till I'm 30. That's like every parent's dream, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's not.
That's probably why all parents
can't
don't
go
hush about that.
No. Because I tell you what, your daughters will become, they will want to be the head of their household. And when you've got 3 women living together like that, it will be squabble.
Yeah. But I love the thought that.
I think that's stopping people from growing. I think that's stopping people from being able to become independent as well.
It is. It's stopping them having their own lives and being, you know, like my sister-in-law. She would love a family and to get married. She, you know, she's just got engaged, so I hope that she'll get that soon.
But building, there used to be a day where you could build on your land, where your family could live near you on your land. You know, that kind of thing. I know the planet is overpopulated, but there's still, if you were ecological about these things, if we could have, and they hadn't got this massive land grab, then there would be land and things and ways that we could do things like that. And people used to build.
So the land grab was the part of our slavery. You know, we started off, and we were allowed to build on lords' land. If we worked for them or farmed for them, we would be able to build a dwelling for our family to live.
Which I suppose is cities.
And then that switched to churches and parishes, that they would take control of the poor. And they were the people without places to live. You like the workers. So if you wanted to work somewhere else, you would apply to the next parish and it would be switched over. So then they had the land grab, which made a lot of the people that actually weren't homeless and weren't you know, paupers, as they said, because they had places to live. When they grabbed the land off them, they all became paupers and controlled by the parish, and that's why we have birth certificates. That's how it used to be settlers' papers, and then it changed to birth certificates. So the whole land grab and everything is part of our enslavement. It was always done to enslave us, and that's like all the technology. We have all these things, but we've lost the basic skills to be able to build a den. I say a den, you know, like a basic house. Like in Africa, how many people live in a grass house or a shanty, you know, something like that. They build their own places and they manage. We'd be like, oh my god. You know, homeless people in this country, right? We have enough land that they could go and build somewhere nice for them to live. There was a homeless man in Oxford, and he lived in the same field for a long time, and it was owned by a business, and then they decided to sell it, and it was going to be developed, but a group of activists joined this homeless bloke and said, you've been here over 12 years, you can claim that field. And he claimed it. The field was worth over £1 million. Because he'd lived there for ages and disturbed, he got it.
Congratulations to him.
If we were allowed to settle on land on occasions, I have a feeling a lot of people would be travellers in a way, in as such they wouldn't stay in one area, or there would be free areas everywhere. I know for a fact if I had the choice and got told, right, land is now open to all. You can pitch there, you can, whatever. I know it wouldn't be exactly like that, but if that was the case, they would travel a lot more. You would have people just up in and going. People will love traveling and love visiting new places. It's just because they're so expensive and travel's so expensive.
I mean, human beings, there is an argument that human beings are meant to be nomadic. We're not meant to be in a single place for the rest of our lives.
That's what I mean, yeah. I think a lot of people would choose that way of life. I certainly would. And it could be done sustainably, I happen to have my sights on the fact that one day I'll own a hemp car run by hemp fuel. Hey ho. By 2015 it'll be in a FEMA camp somewhere. But
I mean,
and this is the risk.
Have you heard of the tiny house movement, by the way?
Yes. Yeah. But that's this ideal thing, that sort of thing.
It is, yeah. I mean, we are. We actually. I was speaking to quite regularly with two of the guys that are sort of launching Tiny House Europe, this movement in the UK. They're trying to get students to basically go for this alternative as opposed to trying to get that, rent rates that will cost them a fortune. And the idea would be, I mean, it'd be great if councils, for example, gave them the land to then settle on with these tiny houses. Because the only issue with tiny houses is you don't have anywhere to put them yet. If the council gave land set aside to put it on, then that would be the ideal thing. But I don't know if you saw
It's a commune up north, I think it is. I'll have to find the link for it. And they brought a bit of land, and it was agricultural land, so that it wasn't supposed to be developed. But they applied to the council, and they managed, as long as they didn't have any main supplies, the council agreed to them having this eco village, and they've now. So I don't know if that would be the best way to do that. Tiny village is to have zero impact. If you could make it sustainable, so you weren't on the main supply.
That's how the pirates worked, wasn't it? They didn't stay in these areas. There'd be base camps, but they never stayed there. They travelled from one to the other and bartered and exchanged, and that's how things were done. Each one, and then they
wouldn't be
bring back things.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. Obviously, I mean people will say, well, the land is overpopulated, etc., etc. Which is where, I mean, if the government were doing their job properly, that's where they would come in as almost like administrators. In the sense, you can move around, you can live where you want to live, economically, sustainably, and so forth. I mean, the world can work in a very, very different way because the government can be.
The action should only be there to protect humanity and the earth. That is the only thing I think they need to do, is to always should be some form of administrational right to give the planet what it deserves and treat it the way that it should, and treat people and animals the way that they should be treated. And other than that, I don't think there is any other laws that need, because that is
not
it,
laws.
that is it. Life, allow life.
I mean, I'm quite a big believer in the sense that the government should be the administerial heart of human society. In the sense that, in my belief, if we ever reach to this stage, which I don't know, see if we ever will or not, is the idea that human beings are being the creative mind. So, for example, if you take clothes, for instance, at the moment we have fashion brands that charge extortionate amounts, and yet the people that make the clothes get paid pittance. In my belief, the government has the power to own these factories that create these clothes, create them sustainably, and all human beings would do is that we would provide them with the creative means. So, for example, and this is where a modern society would potentially come into play, in the sense that they would own the means to create whatever, be it cars, be it clothes, be it, I don't know, whatever it could be, houses, and then we as the creative mind, the people, would then say, to the government, this is the plan for a house, this is a plan for a new car, this is a plan for new clothes. And then the government would send out a couple of these objects, whatever it is, to the general populace. If people like it, they print or create more. But the government would create basically the manual sort of infrastructure, and humanity would be the creative mind that then the infrastructure, be it the government, would then pump out and create. Because, I mean, could you imagine if everybody that wanted to be a fashion designer, or wanted to create cars, or wanted to create eco-housing was allowed to do that without the constraints of money or knowing the right people? All they had to do was send in to the government.
planning permissions on whether that will destroy corporations' business and shit like that. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the reason is because of that, isn't it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that to me would be the lead for a moneyless society, because the government would then control everything.
Don't talk about moneyless society.
But then, when I was saying about, you know, you start off when you're young, you get your place, you buy the things. You think that's it. You've just got it how you like it. Everything's nice. You've got a little washing machine. You've got everything's how you want it, and you think you can sit back and relax. But it's bullshit, because that washing machine's going to break straight away, because it's only going to last a couple of years. The sofa's going to go all floppy, and you know, nothing is lasting. You know, it's a constant drain of what you must buy. It's like, oh, my washing machine's broke this week. I've got my council tax to pay this week. I've got this, that next week.
We only buy new sofas and things like that to make it look good.
No,
it's never.
No, stuff is never.
Time you have a sofa for 3-4 years, right? It feels better.
No, not nowadays. That's old-fashioned sofas.
Where you buy, it depends on.
You go to DFS and you buy a sofa for fucking £2,000, and they have it on their half-price sale or whatever that never ends, and then you pay about £1,300. And I can guarantee, if it ain't foam made and it ain't spring-backed, in a couple of years' time, that thing ain't going to be good enough for the scrap heap. You ain't even going to be able to get 20 quid on your local items for sale, because they are built shit. There is no quality. Yeah.
The same thing, or even computers. I mean, the fact that computers supposed to die after 3 years. I mean, who even made that up? You know,
the same person that invented the light bulb that went after like 5 years. We know that bulb could run over 100.
We know that they plan obsolete things, and I think that the part of the role of the administration or government is to protect the planet and to say enough is enough. You know, we have the technology, we have the materials, we can build a washing machine that lasts 20 years. We can. Yeah. You know, I know people with old twin tubs. I used to have a twin tub for the longest time, and they still work, and they still get clothes a lot whiter than the clothes do nowadays.
I think it's very important for the UK to pull its pants up in this part as well, because the UK is the hub of the monetary system, and the whole monetary system lies on the UK. So when the UK stands up, the monetary system can be looked at. Until that point, you know, obviously you've got your other areas that need addressing, your corporations, your religious crazies, you know, things like that. You've got areas that will need to be looked at, but once the monetary system is dealt with, and we're in a transition that works, because we have plenty of ways that we could do this. There is so many people feel like, oh, how are we going to do this? There's plenty of ways now you can choose from. You know, there's loads. You could go on any kind of system and make it work nowadays. We've got these ideas in place, but UK's that hub. We know it. The City of London is the hub.
Yeah.
Of all monetary, you know, and the UK is standing on very, very thin ice. And I think the world is waiting for the collapse of the UK, with inflation coming and things like that. I think the world is waiting. They know that is when things are going to change financially and economically.
Well, this is
that's why they create these wars, because they.
Well, this is the heart of the beast, isn't it? This is where it all started. This is where it all will end, if it ever ends. You know, this is the heartland. You know, we talk about America as being, but I mean, America is almost that. You know, when what you see in cartoons or in films, where you have the little kid that is the brains, and then you have the big dumb one that is the brawn.
Yeah, that's America.
Britain is the brains of the operation. You know, the financial heartland of the world, etc., etc. And then America has the muscle. I'd
take that one step further. I wouldn't say that England was the brain. I'd say the Vatican was the brain.
Alaska.
Vatican's the spiritual.
The Vatican's the brain. The thought, the guilt of doing this, that, and the other. The Vatican controls your brain and morals and things like that. England, the money, and
the military.
And America is the brawn and the fighting. Though I will say that I think that Israel is challenging America for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Israel relies a lot on American power.
Yeah, but Israel has very much joint with America. They do their training together. They sell them a lot of weapons and things like that. I think Israel likes being in the background and having the control and the power over lots of different things.
But we mustn't forget who created the Zionism in the first place, a political stance on some form of state. It was the Balfour Agreement through the British. I think they're just as involved. I think when we say 3 cities that work together, Israel have a very dominant part in that, so possibly it's 4. They have become a very big part of it, and are, they're getting away with mass genocide, for God's sake.
Just to say one of a few things, just to
it's
mention
like,
one of
look
a
at
few
him.
things.
The West and I'm going to say the West and Israel, because they are right now committing so many war crimes and genocide and pillaging so many countries. The fact that they've gotten away with it this long, and that the Middle East and Russia and places like that haven't risen, is shocking.
I mean, if you think about it, like, we could go to Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Gaza, and probably bomb and kill people and be less demonized by politicians than for speaking our minds online about 9/11.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would actually very much agree with that. Because the way they're trying to make us see these people is they're trying to make them seem like they're a bit subhuman. It's what they used to do back in the day, years and years ago, when they used to talk about the Muslims as the infidels. These people are heathens. They don't have souls. It's okay to kill them. If you kill them, you stand at the right hand of the Father. The Almighty God. It's all this rubbish of using propaganda, using your religion, using your mentality, using your kids, blackmailing you to make you do what you want. What they want, not what you want.
And you have extremists in every religion. We mustn't forget that. There was a man, I can't remember his name, but he was saying that how you say Muslim countries. You say Muslim countries beheading and things like that. He says you don't say Saudi Arabia, you say Muslim countries. What about the Muslim countries that don't behead people? What about the Muslim countries where women have equal rights? You're labelling them all under the same label of Muslim countries. And they went on to say about female genital mutilation, which I've seen a lot of. That's Muslim. Well, actually, it's not in Africa. It's not at all. It's Christians in Africa.
But then isn't Jewish also male genital mutilation?
But that's more acceptable than female for some reason. Well, I know that obviously with women's.
Well,
is a bit
because
more,
I would say that's also because a lot of males have to be circumcised for medical reasons as well, so they've managed to get away with it through that as well. I don't know, but equally, you are cutting the genitalia and removing it from the person.
Yeah.
At an age that I don't feel is responsible to make that decision.
I think that, like circumcision, I'm going to compare it like with piercings and things like that with children. I think, why would you want to? When my baby was little and I was holding it, and I wouldn't want them to do anything, even the little heel prick that
when they do the Guthrie
born.
test, when they do the Guthrie test, you want to take that midwife and you want to dunk her down the toilet. You're almost cutting the back of my child's heel.
You don't want them to know pain.
No.
You don't want them to feel pain. You want to feel them protected, loved, and secured. I don't see why somebody would then take that child to a piercing studio and allow somebody. Yes, it is over in a minute, but for that instant, you've completely betrayed that child. You've held them there.
But isn't that a proof of how brainwashed
and they look at you?
Some people are, in the sense that you will do anything because a religion told you so. You'll get your child circumcised for no other reason than because a man in a wig in a black cloth told you so. Or however the religious preacher is dressed in that's all you're doing it for, is because someone else told you to do it.
And you are saying that your God, or what, is
What is circumcision for?
What is it for?
Yeah, why do they do it? I
But
understand
to do it, you're saying that God or your creator it has flawed design you. That he's made you wrong, then we need to correct God's error.
That's a good point.
You know, I know they think it's cleaner, but I don't actually know why, they did it.
Yeah,
And
they think,
to be honest, why would the first person think of doing it? Somebody did it first off. What the fuck?
Just like
And then people thought, oh yeah, that's great. Let's do it every year. Everyone.
Some sick fuckers on this planet, and
So we shouldn't laugh because we don't understand it.
no, I don't understand it, but I also do. I also understand they are both genital mutilation. One, yes, it is to kill the female orgasm because they think it's evil. I just didn't understand what the Jewish religion for circumcision was, and whether it's because it's not an orgasm, is it?
No, I know they think it's cleaner, but I don't know about anything. It could have stemmed, right? Let's take it back through history, and I'm not saying that this is how it has stemmed, but say, like, in a time when my daughter was born, she just had a little bit of skin, and that got really infected and really, really bad. Now, say years ago when we were living a lot more primitive, were boys prone to infections or anything like that, and that's why the practice started, or what?
Well, that's
I don't
what
know.
they do it medically for anyway, don't they? But I'm wondering, it can't be that if it's a part of a religion, it can't have any kind of for medical reasons. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, if you've got to think about it, that it can. Religion is a form of societal control. So before they had laws, they had religion. So before you had the problem of, because don't forget, I mean, courts and stuff like that didn't exist before. The way to stop people from killing each other, etc., I had to say, you'll go to hell if you do this. Because otherwise, people would go around killing whomever, or so they said they would. And obviously, for health reasons, stop you from getting diseases, etc., they'd have to invent certain ideals, and they were put into religion, make people believe it, and then they would do it, so that will technically improve society's health, etc., etc. So you might be right. I mean, that could be for health reasons in the sense that rather than letting loads of people get infected because baths and cleanliness wasn't a normal circumstance back in the day, and to make people do it, to make what they consider the poor and ignorant to do it, they had to put it in religion, because all religions is a form of societal control. You pray every Sunday. When you pray every Sunday, you have to always give money to the church. You have to always respect your neighbor. You have to always do certain things. I mean, all these commands are all to make you behave in a certain way. It's not always negative, but the point is it's all about societal control. Judaism is the same thing as Islam, and Christianity. And it's a way of making sure that if they ever went to war, they could call on millions of people to die whenever they needed to defend themselves. Because
unless you're Muslim.
If Christianity, Islam, and Judaism
not allowed
didn't
if you're
exist,
Muslim.
huh?
Unless you're Muslim. It's the only one you're not allowed.
But what I'm saying is, if these religions didn't exist, just because someone draped in gold went to you and said, you have to fight against these people that live half a world away, and when I say draped in gold, I'm talking about the Pope, do you think anybody would actually listen to this old man? As it seems clearly nuts because he's declaring war to people he has never seen before, has no connection to, other than the fact of one ruined city. Nobody in their right mind would ever go to war with something that stupid unless they genuinely believe in something. It's Christianity. They would never have gone to war otherwise. No peasant would ever follow them.
No, it's down to the fact that everybody's biggest fear is their mortality, and religion offers them immortality.
Well, they play on it very well, don't they? They blackmail people in death. They say, if you don't do what I say, you'll go to hell.
Yeah.
You see, it's a form of blackmail. It's a form of societal control. Which is really quite terrible, really, when you think about it.
It is really bad.
It's amazing that in this day and age, people are still falling for it.
Yeah, well, no, I think they've done a very good job. A few times I think they've been foiled over the years, but generally I think considering they've done a really bloody good job. because you know, they got us in a nice little corner on a few occasions, haven't they? So they've
Well, you
managed
can't
to do
fault
what
them on
they
their
do
planning, that's
plan
for
in.
sure.
No. But they plan for centuries. They don't plan for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole
And
point. I mean,
you
you're
know,
fighting, you know, people are fighting an enemy that has had years of experience. You know, it's like the activist is walking into a chess game full of ideas and ideals, and you're fighting a player that's been playing for 40 years.
Yeah.
Not an easy win. You know,
No.
they've got experience. They have all societies, you know, institutions, etc., on their side. All you've got is number. That's all activists have is number and their creativity.
And knowledge at the moment. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
knowledge is yeah, but you know, like the internet has been phenomenal. I mean, look at I look at Hong Kong. I mean, them protesters. I've been to protests in London, right? And a copper told us to get. This was one that me and Kiki was at, right? And it was the Freedom March, I think it was, Mitch's March.
The first one this year.
And we went down to outside Parliament, and we were stood in the road, and we were blocking traffic. The coppers come and said, "Will you move?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not moving." And I'm ready to sit down. Everybody else gone. Just me on my own, making a stance. And he's like, you know, this is supposed to be a bit of civil disobedience. And if you're scared of being, you know, they are not going to arrest the whole crowd. If the whole crowd sits down, you're all right. If I just sit down on my own, I'm arrested. You know, and you look at Hong Kong, these people are getting tear gas straight in the face. You know, these people, they have a government that will shoot them, for fuck's sake. And they are still out there taking a stance. And that is what we need in this country. We need to go ahead and make a stand.
Online, right? If anyone's watching this, there is stuff online that does protect you from stuff like that. If you know, you've got goggles, you've got.
You can make a gas mask out of a gas mask. You can make out of an empty bottle of pop and a dust mask. That will protect your eyes and you'll be able to breathe. If you turn it upside down and you cut it out, so you've got mask shape and the lid's there, and you put a dust mask inside the lid, you take the lid off so that you can get air in, but all your face is like protected from anything sprayed in your face. Because let's not forget old Boris and his comedy stand-up routine that he did at the Tory conference, where he was going on about chilies. And there was a business that was doing well out of chilies or whatever. But, you know, and he's got water cannons. And in many countries, they stick chilies in water cannons. They stick pepper spray in water cannons. You know, and I'm telling you now, when them water cannons come out, it might not just be water that they've got in it.
Oh no, the British are too fancy. You know, the British government's too fancy for that. There will definitely be some sort of concoction or something. I can see. We're way too fancy for that. But I mean, it is all about solidarity. And what also, I guess, you can surprise it is that we have got, I mean, probably some of the most lean and relaxed police force in most parts of the world. I mean, the British police force, they're still human. I mean, you know, activists call them various names and whatnot and become very, not necessarily aggressive to the police, because they don't in many cases, but from what I've seen anyway on, you know, either first person or the police tend to be quite human.
Yeah.
They tend to be very human. I mean, if you look at America, for example, they will shoot you. They will beat you up if there's nobody there videoing it. They have absolutely no problem killing you, like they've shown in Ferguson very many times.
If they are filming you, they will still continue in America.
Huh?
Did you see the bloke that got away? The bloke, I can't remember what they said about him, but he was laying on the floor and he did like a prairie thing, and he was doing it really loud, and then the two policemen was on him, that he spooked them so much that they kind of lost track of what they were doing, and he got away. He ran away. I can't remember what he did. He didn't even do anything bad. They just pounced on him, but he totally distracted them to the point he jumped up and ran. And then there was the naked ninja one. There's a naked ninja one. He's naked, and they try and tackle him, and he just goes ninja on them and gets away. I was like, whoa.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh no, they got him later. They got him later.
get
There's a
him?
follow-on to that
Oh.
naked ninja.
Did you
Oh,
see
they
the
did,
guy?
yeah.
Did you see the guy? He was on the American version of Road Wars a while ago. I think it was during the Ferguson riots, just at the very beginning, and they had a helicopter on him, and they were filming it. And this guy was absolutely incredible. Like he had 4 police cars, loads of police on it. They just couldn't catch him. He was doing parkour. He was running around like you can't imagine. He was ducking, diving, jumping over fences, and they just couldn't follow him.
I think that's brilliant. I think
But
it's
what's worse,
absolutely.
though, is that he was clearly on drugs because he every now and again stopped to talk to buckets of water and trees.
Oh.
Which made it worse because despite the fact that he was having conversations with wildlife, they still couldn't catch him. Like, he would stop, have conversations, sway a little bit like Jack Sparrow, and then as soon as the police tried to jump on him, he'd run away again.
Yeah, but maybe
Brilliant.
that's what society's turned into now. Do you know what I mean? We've all turned into people that end up talking to ourselves and stuff like that. It's the society, you know. We're all a little bit broken from this system. It's like their flaws are being labelled onto us. It's like, oh, you've got ADHD. It's not the fact that society is totally fucked and you can't fit in because you don't get it. It's like, hello.
Yeah.
A lot of kids can't. They're indoctrinating. This isn't natural. It's not natural. We know there's better way. Yeah.
Can you just call it a form of trauma?
Oh.
And it's that, you know, when a child sees something really, really horrifying, they get traumatized. Their actions then become relating to that trauma. I'm pretty sure it's not that far-fetched to say that most people nowadays are traumatized by the way society really fucked them over beyond comparison.
Yeah, I think they are. And especially, you think about going through the system as a small child and it is coming out now. They were paedophiles in the 70s. The MPs, the high up people, a lot more people are going to be coming out and being put out on this. And you think how traumatic that must be for some of these children. Where are they? You know, where are they?
But then look at there's a woman in Peterborough, isn't there? Who
We're doing that Sunday. Yeah.
she's been standing up against the paedophiles and things, but she's in prison now.
They put her in beach. She was part of the Beechwood conspiracy, like with the paedophiles in that care home. She outed them. She's a whistleblower. She outed him. And now she's in Peterborough prison near me. Well, actually, so I can see it out my window. She's in Peterborough prison for setting fire to a shed. She's been in there for a long time now. We're going there Sunday for a vigil and a bit of a recap and stuff like that with the local Bobby, obviously.
But it just goes to show, because I've done a lot with children in care. And care leavers, like online and things like that, and around the neighbourhood really. And there is no real place for these people to go when it's happening. You know, social services does not investigate social services.
No.
You know, so and it is so prolific. I don't know if they'll ever be able to get past the tip of the iceberg because it's institutional.
Yeah.
You know, my brother, he was sexually molested as a child, but he didn't really. He's bipolar now, and it was only when he was getting treatment for his bipolar that the memories come back. Do you know what I mean? And it's something that he's blocked out for the longest time. And you know, as horrific as it is to happen to girls, you know, it must be really horrific for boys who then are left to question their sexuality and things like that. And, you know, something has to be investigated properly. I mean, the person who's ahead of it now, she's implicated in it herself, so she's no real good. You know what I mean? We need an outside agency and a proper, thorough investigation so it can be put to bed.
We need a new age advocacy. We need people like Fathers for Justice, social action, and children screaming to be heard, and even the the smaller groups, you know, Save the Children, you know, just smaller.
This is a good group.
Yeah, if they were all to join together and create an advocacy that would replace social services, because I think social services have gone past their time. These people actually care about kids, and I know that.
The way I'm seeing it though is that talking about one issue, like for example, children in care and I can advocacy, I don't think would solve the issue, because the problem that something that big is still happening in society, despite the fact that these people have been outed, despite the fact that people know that this stuff goes on, despite the fact that everybody knows what happens in Parliament now. It's not something that is left to the fringes of conspiracy nutters. You know, this is in the mainstream.
Yeah.
But it was conspiracy nutters.
Yeah, it was.
For a long time.
Still dubbers for it, because we've talked about it for a long time now. They were still.
And
now, if you
it's the tip of the iceberg when you get to like.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say it's tip of the iceberg when you start looking into Dunblane and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is their theories, and I have no way of telling which way is right or wrong, because I'm not privy to all the information and I haven't seen where all the sources are. But pretty much everything else they've said has been right. You know, so that would really lead me to question that the whole Dunblane incident needs opening. If you're really serious about addressing this issue and looking into it, you've got to be 100% open. Lift the ban, the 100-year ban on Dunblane, and let that be investigated as well.
Yeah.
And knowing how social services have dealt with cases like Baby P, Victoria Climby, kids like that, and then kids in care that are being abused and hurt in care, we know it's obviously happened. We know the elite groups have been visiting places like Elm. It's out in the city. Now, can you turn round? What would happen if a mother turned round to social services and said, I'm sorry, you're not coming in my house, you're an advocate for people? Because that is what they are. That is what they are. They have an adoption quota, for one thing. They have abuse and neglect in their services. What in our right mind think that we should allow these people anywhere near us? Anywhere.
I mean,
but if you said that, turned around and said that, you'd have them took away just for the fact you said that.
Yeah, if I was taken to the family court and I stood up and said, look, right, if you think there's a problem with my parenting, that's fine. But I think social services are inadequate to offer any kind of solution because of their own abuses and issues. Well, how far do you think I'd get?
Not very far.
Even though it's fact.
I mean, it's automatically trying to take on the institutions would never work. You know, nobody would know. Just because they, I mean, it's almost like whenever you go against the state always wins because they make the rules as they go along. So, you know, you find a hole, they'll just fill it up with something else. And that's the problem I have with doing one single issue, is that in my belief, you tackle social services, you're going to get nowhere. You're just going to bang your head against the brick wall.
I don't know. I think that social services should be tackled just the same way that beat the bailiffs and first response to tackling evictions.
But what I think what Matteo is saying is that the whole corrupt system needs to be brought down, which would bring down social services on its own.
It all happen in tandem. You know, you need to have people tackling the bailiff, you need to have people tackling social, but it needs to all happen at the same time, continuously coordinating with each other. So whenever one has a protest, every single other union, organisation, charity, movement, Usenet, whatever.
But the unions aren't interested in that.
No.
See, People's Assembly and the unions are not interested in the corruption and the injustices. They're interested in the wage and work conditions and things like that, but it's all the same problem. That's what people need to wake up to. Corruption is the one label. Corruption is everything. Without, you know, corruption is what keeps politicians in a place that don't listen to us. Corruption gets businesses to frack our lands against our will. Corruption is what gets your kids taken off you because they're desperate to meet their quotas, or your sanctions at the benefit office, or everything is corruption.
Why your employers
and it's all money.
Employers can't pay you enough or won't pay you enough, so that it has to be topped up with tax. and benefits, so that you're
I mean, this is the biggest thing, right? They go on about benefit claimers, and the Tory party really did hit, you know, about, American work pay again, right? You won't get benefits unless you work there or whatever. The biggest benefit scroungers in this country are businesses, and our tax credit bill is probably a lot bigger than our benefit bill for job seekers allowance or income support, because we are subsidising low pay because businesses are and I could say I work at Tesco's, well, not Tesco's because their profits weren't that good this year, but somebody's profits were a bit better this year. No, so say like I work for, pretend that Tesco's is still raking in the millions, the billions, and they're reporting all these profits, but what nobody's taken into account is how much government money is subsidising their low pay to enable them to make their millions. Now that is benefit scrounging. If you've got billions and you are taking money out of the government, then you are a benefit scrounger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the royal family are benefit scroungers.
Yeah, look at
Oh, they're the biggest ones.
10,000 death in 2010 to 2011, 2014. The woman rides out on a golden carriage encrusted in diamonds. You know what I mean? What society believes that a sovereign of that kind is a benefit in this new age? It just doesn't fit. It doesn't.
Why should one family, just because they're born into that role, be able to live like that when everybody else is to struggle like mad? You know, it
well, they
doesn't
know
make
they're under
sense.
threat. They know they're under threat now. They know that you cannot put austerity in and still have some woman rolling around on a golden carriage because their second name comes from centuries. You know, that it just don't roll, and it ain't gonna roll. And I tell you what, if it don't roll with us and it's not sorted, that's why the future generation are kids that have been, corporations have used gagging tactics on them in terms of putting advertisement in places so the kids nag the parents. They've used them for so long to get money, they don't realise what monsters they've created when you say no to these kids, because it's going to get to a point, and it's become a very double-edged sword for them, I think, because there are monsters out there that will do anything for an Xbox.
Yeah.
We have created a society of young people, not all young people, but some young people that want the easy way, that they want to be the whack, they want to get their tits out, and they want to get famous for any way that they can. They want easy money, they'll go on Big Brother, they'll go on reality TV, they just want money so they can buy shit. They don't give a shit how they get it, they just want this stuff. Whatever it is that the Sony, Apple come out with next week, they want it, and they want it now, without working, without doing a damn thing for it. Now, those people are going to get very stroppy and spit their dummies out and kick up a big fuss when they are having to work in Starbucks, stacking shelves in Tesco's, and still not being able... No, they won't. So they're creating a rod for their own back.
Yeah. But what they're also doing is that these people are very easily manipulated now. And I mean, I know a lot of people that are like that will go after the next trend just like that, you know. Because why even thinking about it? And it's like, well, why did you buy the next iPhone? Oh, because. What do you mean because? Like, well, there must be a reason why. Oh no, because you know, Apple told me to.
Yeah, because it's bendy. I wanted a bendy one.
These people are very easily manipulated afterwards by marketing. And
They are.
Or is it that they are creating such an easy system for anybody, even an activist, for instance, that had a bit of money, or that they put their money together, like, I mean, the People's Assembly has shitloads of money, for example, that they actually put it to good use with advertising and so forth, and they could get people over on their side so easily now. Because they're making people very easy to manipulate. They've created a system that is manipulative without even trying.
If the television didn't exist, we'd have won this by now.
Huh?
But the television is not existing like it used to exist. People spend more time sat on the internet not watching EastEnders. You know, people are online and on their phones. They are multitasking. They're not really taking in what's on telly. You know, they're more sat there. The phone is killing TV. The internet is killing TV.
There's only one
That's
problem.
why they want net neutrality.
There's only one problem though with the internet, and that is that it is huge. It is amazingly huge. So you could be on the internet and never once come across anything that is true. If you wanted to look up celebrities, that is all you get day in, day out. There is no way you'd stumble on anything else.
Your person of interest would be the only score, because that's what Google's there for, isn't it? To zone in on your specialities and what you like and what you do. And every day, Tesco's does it with their club card. You know, people don't sit there and think, oh, hang on, I'm going to log on Tesco's and I'm going to check my previous orders from fucking years ago, right? Now, that in itself will tell a world full of knowledge about who you are, what you eat, what you do in life, what you buy at what certain times. Do you buy alcohol every Friday night? Do you buy cigarettes, Giant Rizzler every single night? Do you know what I mean?
That's the same with your credit cards. I mean, how many people actually still bother to take? I mean, I always take cash out here. Yeah. Because, you know, you go spending your card, they know exactly what you're buying. Somebody does.
Cash machines don't make.
I mean, there was a thing with LG Telly. This bloke set up a gateway between his LG smart TV and the internet, and it was recording everything from the colour of clothes he was wearing.
Yeah, but did you see how they did it, right, with credit cards? What they did is they made credit cards accessible to people with good earnings, right? So you had this little card you could put in a slot and you could go bing, 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 and that was only eligible if you had good credit. Suddenly, you can now have it. A single mum can have it. A child who's 16 can have it. Everyone can have it. It's like, oh, we've just been allowed access to something only people with good credit get. Let's use this shit. And that's how they did it. Because if you'd have brought that out before, they'd be like, I'm not, you'd question it. But the way they go around it, they do it so perfectly. So,
I mean, people say, but how
musical people, it just flows.
They said that, you know, people often look and think, well, we'd have to go back to the Dark Ages, but we wouldn't. We'd have to go back to the 60s. The 60s, you know, people didn't get a lot of credit in the 60s. A lot more people grew stuff in their own gardens in the 60s. You know, something went dramatically wrong.
It was still...
No, 80s, you had the yuppies and shit like that.
You had your allotments in your garden still. You still had, you know, communal living, communities coming together and things. They whacked the shit out of this in 2000, the 20th century. They've whacked the shit.
20th century killed a lot. But what I was thinking, I mean, you wouldn't be able to just put back that because the cost of living is just too disproportionate. The 60s, you could buy things that didn't cost as much as they do now. I mean, you'd be able to get your own house at some point, or at least a flat. Nowadays, I mean, for someone my age, it's impossible to even consider getting your own place, let alone jumping on a property ladder.
That's why they defend the monetary system so highly, because you think once that collapses, and you know, once we've got a new regime in place, you know, things would be totally different. But then that's why they executed Gaddafi. So no fucker in their right mind's going to go out there unless they've got a huge. That's why they want Iran. Do you know what I mean? Places like that might get too big for their boots, that might...
But that's why Putin should do it. Putin should do it.
Well, I'm surprised China came out and done it, but maybe that's the tactic. I don't know what it is, why they've come out and done it. China is going to hold a big card in this, I think, bigger than we realise.
I think China, because I mean, the only two countries that the West can't destroy, because Iran they could destroy if they wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, Iran isn't that powerful. But if you look at Russia and China, they can't do what they want. You know, the USA can't tempt Russia because Russia is not weak. Russia is incredibly powerful. They have the biggest nuclear stockpile in the world.
Yeah.
And you may not like Putin as an individual, you may not like his policies in his own country, but he and China are what's keeping the monetary system in check.
Microphone, please.
But what I was thinking about, by the way, was the idea of imagine if they reset the currency. If they kept the currency the same, but for example, you know how £1 now is worth about £100. the pound is worthless now compared to how it was. Imagine if a government, the British government, whatever it was, the next one, suddenly reset the pound.
Almost like Iceland kind of did when they paid off everyone's mortgages.
Yeah, that's basically what they did.
Mm.
Where they say, okay, everybody resets the pound. The pound is worth what it used to be. All shops price their prices to what it used to be. All companies do the same. What that would mean is, because you have £100 in your bank account, it may not be worth much now, but if you reset the currency, suddenly that £100 is actually worth 1,000. So everybody gets a hell of a lot richer.
Yeah.
The only problem,
I think they need to take back the government should be producing any currency and setting interest rates, and it should be not a private entity that is. I mean, because when they say like all these countries owe all this money, who do they owe it to?
I told you it was this organisation that traced back the money, didn't they?
To the bottom of the sea.
They traced the money trail. This Swiss financial institute traced the money trail of what all the governments owe the money, and it goes through banks, obviously, as you can imagine, and then it goes through insurance companies. Insurance companies apparently have a huge amount to play with the money owed by governments. They're the ones that own some of the biggest government bonds. Insurance companies. That's probably why there are laws saying you have to have insurance companies, so they can't not have business. And then it starts to get a little bit dangerous with who owns what, and then.
And well, I tell you what, who also needs looking at. Whether I should say this now, but well, I'm sorry, it's got to a point now. It's just like, whatever.
You set it up already anyway.
Yeah, the lawyers of these governments, the Queen, of the people. The lawyers have a hell of a lot of say. The barristers, the people who stand
that's it, and there's probably a lot of other people that that the royal family are the head, the PR, the front faces, but there is probably a lot of people that work behind the doors with governments as well that are pulling the strings. These people need to be brought out into the light. I mean, Diana called
to understand it all.
Diana, I think, what she call them, the men in suits or whatever that were like very controlling. These sort of things need to be brought out in the open, because really, for there to be a government, there has to be a trust between people and the government, and that is transparent. You can't keep hiding things. Transparency is key in this day and age. If you want a government that the people are behind, you have to be honest and transparent. And that means nothing is beyond the people's knowledge.
But then you've got knowledge. With the knowledge comes, obviously, we all know that with the knowledge comes power. You've got these people. We knew that Hitler wasn't the brains, and I don't believe that the corporations are the brains. I believe that the people who tell them what to do and tell them laws and then also create the laws that would work best for them and have them written up. I think those are the ones that need looking at a lot more, which aren't spoken about a lot.
I think
not about them at all.
I think laws should be taught in schools.
Huh?
What?
I was just saying, I think laws should be taught in schools. A basic understanding of the British language, terminology, history of words.
I don't think that should happen nowadays.
I don't think it should be law.
It has to be. You need to know the basic understanding of the terms of use in the legal language, because it fathoms everybody. People go down to the job centre and they're expected to sign a form that says, "Do you understand this form?" You're signing it to say you understand it, but never at any point are the legal terms and conditions pointed out to the claimant signing it. You are signing that you understand something that is beyond understanding.
Asking for that in education is like asking the government for a bit of land and saying, "Can you leave me alone, please?"
But it's all part. Yeah, but it should happen because it's part of transparency. If you're asking people to sign things that they understand, because my brother just won his tribunal based on that, because he refused to sign the form because it said that, "Do you understand this?" And he says, "You failed to give me legal definitions of the words that are used within this form, so I don't know what I am signing to. So unless you clarify, I'm not signing it, and they would never clarify what he was signing. So, and he won. They settled out of court. They didn't want the day. He wanted the day in court, but they didn't take it that far. They settled just before.
It wouldn't happen because we know education is literally just product line. Fucking, you know.
I want to see political education in schools. I desperately would love to see political education in schools. You educate people how the system works and change it. People criticize that you haven't imagined. Because people are pissed, people are angry, people are annoyed, but they're so apathetic because they're like, well, what's the point? Because I can't get involved, even if I do, nothing will change. Well, that is not... will change if everybody gets involved. If everybody engages, even if you take it to the lowest common denominator and say, if you vote, you can change the government, it is true. Voting will change it, because if everybody in your constituency suddenly voted for an independent instead of a conservative, they can't cheat the vote. They're going to have to put that independent. And if that happens across the country, every single conservative MP will be kicked out. The government can change because they are bound by their own laws. They are screwed in a way as well because they're bound by their own laws and conditions.
Before human rights, once the human rights disappear, they won't be bound by their own laws because they can just change it as and when to benefit them, because at the minute they're restricted by human rights.
Well, at the minute, that's why we've got a kind of, we're on a bit of a timer now.
Yeah, very short timer.
Well, I don't see a Conservatives winning 2015.
Start digging that land.
I mean, I don't know how, because a right is a right. You can't take a right away from somebody. You can steal it, but it's still their right. You're just repressing it.
Well, I mean,
and having had it, I think it's probably a lot harder to lose than it was to get, if you know what I mean.
I think it depends how you phrase it, because the Nazis managed to take away the right, any right that women had, and the German women were seemed absolutely fine by it because they were indoctrinated in the right way. So if you do it the right way, if the Conservatives take lessons from the Nazis,
which
then
they do,
probably do it properly.
Operation Paperclip, the whole system's built on Nazis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they probably learned it from somebody else, probably from us, because we were the ones that first invented concentration camps in Africa. Point is, I mean,
if you look at because one of the other things that was brought up was, you know, like getting. I said earlier about how we would apply like parishes to move, you know, and have right to move. Well, one of the things that the Conservatives were also against is the freedom of movement. Now they're selling this as, well, we'll stop all the EU people coming here, but what you'll also do is you'll stop us from going there. We'll lose our freedom to move around like we can now, which...
It's all about trapping people.
You know, well, it is, and people may look at it and think, well, we don't want immigration here. We're too full or whatever, and that's how they'll sell it to the British people. But really, there's no pride in Britain if you're restricting the right of a British person, and you would be restricting my right to go and say I want to now live in Spain, my right to say I now want to go and live in Iceland. You know, so it's a double-edged sword, and people have a pride in Britain to the point where they would erode a British person's right to keep out other people. And it's like, what? What? Really?
It doesn't make sense when you think about it in the long run, you know? It just does not make sense when you think about it in that way. And it's, I mean, it's just...
It does if you think about it in a right-wing kind of way.
But I mean, honestly, I genuinely do not think Conservatives are going to win. I think it's going to be a Labour government. I genuinely do think it's going to be a Labour government. I can't see the Tories winning. With what they've said, they've alienated people that used to be right-wing, simply because of because they're not. I mean, some of their laws are so anti-democracy that even the most staunch right-wing person. Because don't forget, I mean, right-wing people aren't against democracy. Right-wing people are liberal in the sense that everybody's out for themselves. But if you start attacking individual people's rights, you're not talking about attacking the poor. You're not talking about attacking benefit claiming, which they're also doing. You're talking about attacking people that are independent. So even the middle class, even the upper middle class, who don't care about the poor, but they care about their own individual freedom to say what they want, to go where they want, to do whatever they want. The Conservatives have started to attack that as well.
Yeah.
See, I had a little theory. I have a lot of little theories. I'll share this one with you online. All these like Conservatives that are deflecting over to UKIP. What if that was a crafty ploy? So that if they do form a coalition, they've got a lot of Tories in UKIP to sway their votes.
I don't know if that's true. I can't see that simply because, first of all, they were very anti-UKIP at the conference, which may again be a ploy. But then if you think about these people, I mean, these people are obviously quite clever in the way they do things. So what would be the point of splitting their votes when they know very well that in a first-past-the-post system, throwaway a vote doesn't count for anything. If UKIP and the Conservatives both together get 60%, but the Labour candidate gets 40%, it'll be the Labour candidate that gets elected despite the fact that he had less votes than the other two, simply because the first-past-the-post was incredibly unfair as a system. So it wouldn't make sense, in my belief, and this is just my belief, I might be wrong, but for me it wouldn't make sense for them to split their vote number, especially now when they know they're very unpopular, they know they're hated by a lot of society. So what would be splitting their vote? I don't know.
But even if they were disheartened with the Conservatives, for whatever reason, they're probably all individual reasons, and they went over to UKIP, they're still going to be quite likely to vote for Conservative things because they have Conservative values.
Oh, in the end, by coincidence, I'd say most probably they'd be identical by coincidence. But I don't think this ploy was planned. I'd say, if anything, this is a good thing for the Labour Party because it splits the Conservative vote quite a bit. But in the end, if they both get into coalition together, for me, then it would just basically be a Tory government. They wouldn't be very... It would be a Tory government with slightly more racism, if that could actually exist, if more racism could actually come from the Tories.
I think it can. I think it can exist a lot more.
I think
UKIP might get a couple of MPs. I don't think they're going to get that many, to be quite honest.
They're going to get 3 or 4. I mean, Nigel Farage, I think, will get in because he's a very, very charismatic individual and he's got the top pick anyway of the most racist or county. He's definitely going to get an MP seat. I think they're going to get 3 or 4, but I think it's going to be a Labour government, a Labour minority maybe.
I'm a bit worried about what Labour's done up in Scotland because Scotland was quite a stronghold for Labour, and I know that in the wake of the referendum, a lot deflected to UKIP, SNP, and Green Party. Whether that'll settle down by the time it comes to actually voting, because I know that in the local elections, UKIP did quite well. That I know a lot of people who voted for UKIP who wouldn't vote for them in the election. It was more of a protest vote.
Peterborough got UKIP seat here where I am. They got.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody. I mean, even Lib Dems get local seats. I mean, British people seem not to care about local seats. They seem to voice their disgust at politicians by using local seats as the way of doing that. I can't see them voting UKIP at a general election en masse simply because they just don't trust themselves to do so. I think they just fall back to the main 2 parties as they've always done. You know, they use
each individual city and town, don't they? That each council to inject individually what that council would be more interested in, but not one bit matters really, because that possibly wouldn't happen if they were to come in. They'd be like, right, we'll pop this in as a T and C to what will happen if we're in Parliament, because that matters to that city, that town. Now, Peterborough is very racist, and it is racist. It's a racist city. I can't walk down the street without hearing racist remarks, and it's being done very openly and without any shame. And that is why the UKIP in Peterborough, you know, we had our councillor in Peterborough turn up to a peace rally with an IDF t-shirt causing problems. Now, that was a UKIP councillor. One UKIP councillor turning around and saying he defends the IDF. Now, this was a peace rally. That doesn't involve armies. Peace don't involve armies if they're going to be the ones bombing people. All right, we welcomed the Jewish community, we welcomed the Christian community, we welcomed everyone, but we didn't welcome IDF because they're the ones committing this bombing and the killing. Now, that UKIP councillor is why they have voted, because he's clearly,
He's clearly
they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Of course they do. Of course they do. They know exactly
They really
what they're doing.
do. Especially in an area like this, we have a very big EDL march that goes through here every couple of years.
Well, they're
And
going
it's
to see
huge.
that guy as having a lot of bottles to coming down to a protest, and he's probably going to get elected again. Because they're going to see
Not if
him
I've got
there.
anything to do with it, it won't.
Huh?
Not if I've got anything to do with it, it won't.
But you know what I mean? I mean, that's why he did it, because he shows, I'm one man standing against all these terrible Muslims, blah, 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 etc., which they're going to use to PR the crap out of it, eventually.
Yeah.
I've got to head off, by the way.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Have a good time.
Okay.
I shall see you guys
Nice
again.
chatting to you.
You too. See
I've
ya.
got a nice jacket for sale. If anyone wants it, inbox me. Bye.
Take care.
See ya, bye.
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 Down the rifle.